Good afternoon, students. It's me, Miss Chung, again, and it's the season of studying for job because your end of year is coming in less than a month's time. Okay, and it's also the time where I'll be sitting down for maybe 1 or 2 hours talking to myself and writing job notes. Okay, so I hope this helps all of you for your end of year. So now we're gonna start with housing. Yep. So there are a few parts to housing. We are going to look at the first one, which is housing shortage. Okay, so this entire topic on housing talks about how there is housing shortage and how do you know that there is housing shortage, right? There's two things that you will see happening. So the first thing you will see is homeless people. Okay, and the next thing you will see is slums and squatters. So this is very important because homelessness and slums and squatters are two different situations. Homelessness is when the person doesn't even have a house to sleep. Okay, so they will just be lying on the streets, sleeping on the roads, maybe some cardboard on the floor, and then they just lie down there. Okay, that is homelessness. Whereas slums and squatters are actually illegal housing, meaning to say they built their houses out of materials they can find on a piece of land that does not belong to them. So you need to know the difference between homelessness and slums and squatters. Okay, so for homelessness, you can also say that there is a this is an inkless pen. Oops. Lack of shelter. Okay, and whereas slums and squatters are heavily populated urban areas and usually of poor quality housing. So at least there is a house. It's not like the homeless people. Okay, so we are gonna focus a bit more on slums and squatter settlements because so let's look at some characteristics of slums and squatter settlements. Okay, so I already said just now, one of them is that they are built without permission. Okay, it's gonna be a bit small, built without permission, and then they do not have, so there is no basic services, which are our water, electricity, and sanitation. Okay, likewise, there is a threat of eviction, meaning to say that the government can just shoo them away because it does not belong to them. Okay, so besides all this, I also want to go into where you can find your slums and squatters. These places are usually found at the edge of cities. Okay, edge of cities. It can also be found along major transport routes. Likewise, it is found adjacent, or you can just say next to industrial areas, adjacent to industrial, or near or city center. So this is where you will find your slums and squatter settlements. Okay. Well, I guess that's all for slums and squatter settlements. So I want to go back to how to identify housing shortage. Okay. So there's actually ways to identify whether a place is actually facing shortage. So besides seeing homeless people and slums and squatter settlements, right, there is a reason why there is shortage, and there are some things that people suffer when they have shortage. Okay, so the first one is actually the lack of safe shelter. Okay, so when we talk about lack of safe shelter, we are talking about how the houses are built at dangerous places. Okay, so if it's not safe, it's dangerous lah. So what do you mean by something that is not safe? So maybe things like the materials that is being built. Okay, so materials. So remember the house song whereby they ask, does your house have a roof? Does your house have walls? You know, it actually makes a difference when your house has a wall, has a door, has a roof, because that means that you are being well protected from the elements. And if you are missing any of these things, or your wall, ceiling, your floor, your door is made out of poor materials, it also means that you are at risk of facing danger. Like maybe when there's earthquake, your house will collapse. When people try to, if your house doesn't have a door, the thief can just come in and steal your things. Okay, so these are very basic elements of a house that you need to have, that we take for granted, because in Singapore we have all these things done properly for us. But in the case of a slum and squatter, or people who are homeless, they actually have none of these things available for them. Okay, so we can look at the materials they use to build the house. So usually it is poor quality. Okay, so what do I mean by poor quality? Sometimes it's made of zinc, which rusts very easily, or it is made of cardboard, which is totally useless lah. If you think about it, if your house is made out of cardboard, it is super useless. Okay, and because these poor quality materials, right, they are usually used as the walls and roof, and hence it's actually very unstable. Okay, so that is one thing that can happen. Sometimes they are also made of, these materials are also flammable. Okay, which means to say that there will be risk of fires. So if your house is made of cardboard, and well, someone lights a cigarette and then throws onto the cardboard and it catches fire, your house is gone. Okay, likewise, they also have very, because all this is very unstable, right? It can also mean that there is a weak foundation, and then there will collapse during earthquake. Yep. So safe shelters, right, it's not just about materials. So it can also be the location in which you are situated at. So many a times, because it's very hard to find a flat land to build houses. By the way, you need a flat land to build house. That is when your foundation is the strongest, and the chances of landslide is very small. But the thing is, it's very hard to find flat land readily available. So many times, people who try to build their houses, they will go to the mountains or the hills, okay, where there's lesser people there, because it's of a vertical incline. So that is when, if you don't build your foundations properly, you just build it next to the hill, landslides happen. Okay, so they will choose areas that are, they can choose so I just put the location, right? It could be a low-lying area, like people build along rivers and coasts, you know, floods will happen there. Okay, likewise, they can also build on steep slopes, and then that is where you will get all your landslides. Okay, and sometimes the way that they are built is very dense and disorderly, right? Because there's a lot of them, so they just decided that they want to settle down in this town because, oh, this town is near the river, I can catch a lot of fish. And then suddenly there will be another 20 household that decides to move in, and they all build their house wherever they want and wherever they like. So there isn't a pattern to it, you know, there isn't like a street 1, street 2, avenue 1 kind of thing. So obviously it's going to be very messy, and it's going to be very hard to find an escape route during emergency time. Okay, so basically that's all we have for the lack of safe shelter. Actually, there's one more. I hope I have set space to do this. I have to write smaller. So lack of basic services. Okay, so I think this one, if I were to just do a quick summary, right? Basic services includes things like electricity, clean water, proper sanitation. Okay, so these are your basic services. Okay, and there is a lack of basic services due to a lack of infrastructure. Okay, lack of infrastructure. I have to really squeeze it. So when there is lack of electricity, is because there is no power lines. When there is lack of clean water, it's because there is no water pipes. Okay, when there is lack of proper sanitation, it's because they do not have a proper sewage system, which is why there's a lack of service lah. Yeah, so that's all we have for housing shortage. Okay, I think it's quite simple. And then I will have to move on to, hey, this is a video, right? This is not a time lapse, right? Causes of housing shortage. Okay, so maybe I will draw it here. Causes of housing shortage. Okay, and there are 4 causes. 2 supply, 2 demand. Okay, so maybe I put my demand here. I hope I have space. Then actually I might not have space, but oh well. Then I'll put my supply here. Okay, so there are 4 causes, 2 demand and 2 supply. So the first one that we're going to look at is the demand cause, which is rapid population growth. Not sure if you remember this. This is my favorite. You'll realize that a lot of problems are caused due to rapid population growth. Okay, So how does rapid population growth lead to housing shortage? Okay, so sometimes when we talk about our world population, right, we are looking at more people living in cities. Okay, so we are talking about our urban population. This will also mean that there will be increase in demand for houses. Okay, so that is one of the main one, which is rapid population growth. I would like to see the other one. Actually, I want to see that the next 2 points are actually linked to rapid population growth. So everything stems from rapid population growth, but you can further break down into 2 parts. So there is migration and there is high birth rates. Okay, so these are all a result of rapid population growth. So when we are talking about migration, we are talking about focusing more on rural to urban migration. Ding, ding, ding. Okay, so rural to urban migration happens due to push versus pull factors. Okay, so in their home country, that means where they were born, home country, versus their destination. Okay, so it could be due to things like poverty. So poverty pushes people away, lack of jobs pushes people away, war pushes people away, political instability, even things like poor healthcare. Okay, so likewise, for the destination country to be able to pull people in, it just means that they probably have a lot of job opportunities. There is stability. There is basically it's just the opposite of the push, if you think about it. Okay, there's a lot I don't want to talk. It's already like 13 minutes into the video. Oh my god. Okay, so people migrate because they want to have a better life. Okay, so all these people will go to the new place that they want to stay in, and then it will cause an increase in demand for houses. So that is all lah. Next one is high birth rates. So if you remember high birth rate, it just means that there is a natural increase. Okay, if you forgot all these, I would say let's just focus on birth rates in cities. It's high. Okay, why? Because there is a higher proportion of 20 to 30 young couples who are likely to start families. So when they start a family, they will want a house, right? So this leads to an increase in population, and therefore there is an increase in demand. However, what happens is when the supply of houses cannot meet demands, that is when there will be shortage. Okay, so that is for demand factors. I shall box it up. Okay, they are all a subset of rapid population growth. Yeah, that's one way you can see it lah. But looking at it this way is correct. Next one, the supply reasons. So supply reasons, there's only two. Okay, one talks about competition, one talks about no space. Okay, if I were to bluntly and very easily say, one is because there's competition, one is because there's really no space. Okay, so the one that is due to competition is called competing land use, which you also learn in floods, right? Whereby to develop a piece of empty land, usually there are many users for it. Okay, so some of these users include let me just write residential, commercial, recreational, industrial, agricultural, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so those are all the different land use that we have. Okay, so what it means is that when land is used for when land is used for one use, for one of the above users, it is unavailable for the others. Yeah, so if I use my land for residential, I can't use it for commercial anymore, or recreational anymore, or industrial anymore. Yeah, see, I'm just talking to myself. Okay, and the thing is, in cities where the population is already very dense, or land use is already, there's so many thousand land, actually not thousand lah, there's only 5, but many people are fighting to use their empty land. It's actually very, very stiff competition. Okay, so there is stiff competition. So what happens is that there will be less supply of land to build houses lah. Yeah, so this one is because there is competing land use. Okay, now the other one is when there is really just not enough land, limited land supply. This is called tragic. Okay, which I must say Singapore is quite tragic lah, because we don't have that much land lah. But we find our ways to make our land as, how to say, as productive as it is, as efficient as it can be. So we build houses that are like 50, 60, 50 stories high, you know. So when there's limited land supply, right, usually it is due to things like physical features. Okay, physical features like mountains and rivers and seas. Okay, so people don't really want to build their house next to all these places. You ask me why? The answer is very simple. You don't want to get into some natural disaster lah. Okay, and the important thing is it is limited flat land, because we need flat land to build houses. And when we build houses on steep slopes, right, the construction is expensive and there could be risk of landslides. Okay, so Do I need to write that down? Okay. No steep slope because of landslide and high cost of construction. Now, so when there is limited flat land, it just means that there is less supply of of land to build houses. Same. So these two add together, you know the demand will not increase, right? And then when there's an increase in demand, then there is shortage, which is why there is housing shortage. La 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 la. That is all for causes. If you want to learn more, I think what you want to look at is the example, right? So for high birth rate, the example is a UK migration. I cannot remember what is the example. Limited land supply. The example should be Hong Kong. Okay, competing land use. You can also talk about Hong Kong. Go and refer to your notes, okay? Mr. Kelvin's notes are very useful. It's the notes that you receive like at the start of the year. Got article one. Yeah. Should I stop here? I think I might stop here. Sorry for sighing. It's a lot of things to write. Okay. Or should I continue with impacts? Okay, I think I stop here. This took a lot already. Congrats. You are done with GQ1 and GQ2 of housing.